Sometimes offense doesn't come from harsh words, but from the silence that follows someone's contempt. In that moment, you may feel the urge to confront, to reclaim justice. But what if silence, not retaliation, is actually your most powerful weapon? Today we'll explore a profound perspective on how you can preserve your self-worth, walk in peace, and let your silence speak volumes, making others realize what they've lost. If you've ever felt disrespected, this video is for you. Hit subscribe and stay with us until the end. What you're about to hear might forever change the way you deal with disrespect. Sometimes you don't need to speak up to make others realize their mistakes. It's your quiet withdrawal, your unwillingness to listen, your absence that becomes the loudest declaration. Those who once took you for granted often believed you'd always be there because you were kind, patient, loving. But they didn't understand that kindness has limits. And when you begin to choose silence over complaint, that's when they finally hear the echo of their own actions. What truly brings regret isn't the words you once said, it's your absence when they need you. Your soft, unannounced disappearance leaves them confused, unsettled, and eventually aware I've lost someone not easily found. You don't need to create scenes of revenge. Use that energy to rebuild yourself. When you invest in your inner growth and elevate your self-worth without needing to prove it to anyone, that alone becomes the strongest answer. They may expect your anger, your reaction, but you choose maturity, and that calm strength is what they can never forget. Don't be afraid to choose silence. Don't fear walking alone. Because when you pull back your presence, something they once took for granted, you teach them a lesson no words could convey. No one stays where they're not appreciated. And sometimes the deepest lessons come in the quietest ways. The time you once spent explaining, forgiving, trying to hold on, is now used to heal yourself. And strangely, once you stop chasing to be understood, accepted, or loved by force, you start feeling lighter. Each quiet step forward becomes a powerful move. You no longer show up where you're not valued. You no longer respond to messages that leave you uneasy. And you no longer hold on to relationships that only weigh down your heart. Silence is no longer pain. It becomes a boundary you set to protect your dignity, peace, and worth. They may never understand why you walked away, but they'll remember very clearly the feeling of your absence, of someone who once listened, who once waited, who once cared. And when you're no longer a habit in their lives, that's when they face the emptiness they themselves created. You may never hear an apology. They may never admit they were wrong. But you don't need that, because you've moved on. And your journey, silent, steady, resilient, becomes the loudest declaration. I don't need your understanding to know I have value. When you're silent, they might think you're weak. But in truth, you're choosing strength with maturity. Because true strength isn't about winning an argument, it's about knowing what deserves your energy. And you'll realize not everyone is worth explaining yourself to, and not everyone deserves the best version of you. You begin to understand not replying is a response, not reacting is a kind of reaction. Silence isn't avoidance, it's the statement of someone who knows their worth. And strangely, the moment you stop trying to be heard is when you're heard the most, because people begin to feel the loss through every day you're no longer there. Instead of retaliation, you choose self-investment. You learn a new skill, focus on your health, your inner peace, your meaningful relationships. Every small change, every positive habit you build, though unspoken, contributes to a stronger, more grounded version of you. And one day, you'll look back proudly and say, I didn't lose myself just because someone else couldn't see my worth. When you stop showing up in someone's life, it's not because you're heartless, it's because you've begun to prioritize yourself. It's not punishment. It's a form of healing for both you and them. Because sometimes people only recognize your value when access to you is no longer so easy. They begin to question, to feel regret, and to wonder, what did I do to lose someone who was always there? And while they're stuck in those questions, you're quietly growing. No need to prove anything. No need to keep anyone informed. You're rebuilding your confidence, your freedom, and your inner peace. Every step you take may be silent, but it is steady. You begin to choose who is worthy of entering your emotional space, not out of obligation or habit, but because of genuine value. You no longer need validation from those who didn't respect you. Instead, you learn to validate yourself in silence, but never invisibly. And soon that glow, the light that comes from within, will become impossible to ignore. They'll notice something has changed. They'll see your calm. They'll see you looking stronger, more radiant, and no longer orbiting around them. That's when true regret begins to set in. There are life lessons you don't learn from books or advice, but only from your own pain, especially the pain of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like your presence was guaranteed. But there comes a time when you stop explaining, stop defending, stop holding on. You simply walk away from a game they thought you'd never leave. That departure doesn't need a goodbye. No dramatic ending. No playing the victim. It's just a decision. A calm yet powerful choice. I deserve better than this. And you withdraw quietly, proudly. Kind enough not to seek revenge, strong enough not to return, and wise enough to know your silence says it all. Because there are voids that can't be filled. And when you leave, you don't leave noise, you leave space. Space no one else can replace, not when it was once filled with genuine love and sincerity. And that is what begins to make them feel the loss. They won't understand right away. It might take days, weeks, even years. But eventually, when their life lacks the light you used to bring, they'll start to feel the cold. And that chill won't come from the weather. It'll come from the truth. They lost something beautiful they weren't wise enough to keep. While they're busy thinking, you're busy living. Living in alignment with your true worth. You're focusing on what nourishes your soul. You're reading, learning, listening to yourself, reclaiming dreams you had buried while worrying about others. You're walking in peace, sitting in familiar cafes. No one knows. Planting kindness back into your spirit. And bit by bit, you are reborn. Not to prove anything, not for anyone to see, but quietly, more radiant than ever. You begin to realize the ones who took advantage of your kindness never really needed you. They needed someone who didn't say no. And when you start saying no, they disappear. But don't be heartbroken about that. Be thankful, because in their absence you finally see who stayed out of love and who stayed out of convenience. Only what is real deserves to walk with you into the next chapters of your life. Your silence might confuse them at first. They'll think you're angry. They'll assume you're trying to play the noble role. But over time, they'll understand you're not angry anymore, you've simply stopped caring. And for those used to controlling others through indifference, that is the most unsettling truth. Because when you stop reacting, they lose the power they once had over you. You don't need to prove you're okay. Your peace will speak for itself. While others are still caught in battles of ego, blame, and noise, you're quietly walking toward the light. And that makes you different, not loud, not flashy, but deep and magnetic. A person who has been hurt and still chooses love over vengeance, that is someone incredibly strong. One day you'll realize the most beautiful form of revenge isn't making someone regret, it's making yourself happy. Truly happy, steadily, independently, and without needing anyone's validation. You don't need to show them you're doing well. They'll see it for themselves. Not through your words, but in the way you walk into a room with calmness, radiance, and a confidence that no one can deny. You once gave others the chance to change, but now you choose to give yourself the chance to heal. And that is a wise decision. You're not running away from anything, you're moving toward what you truly deserve. And sometimes to do that, you must be silent. The world outside may still be loud, full of people who stir up drama to fill the emptiness inside them. But you are no longer the same. You begin to fall in love with silence, because in the quiet, you understand yourself more deeply. You no longer care who's talking about you today, who's waiting for a reaction, who's filled with regret. Because you no longer live to react, you live to grow. That's when you enter a new phase where every action is intentional. Every relationship has healthy boundaries, and every bit of energy you give is carefully chosen. You no longer react, you respond. You don't live to please, you live to be true to yourself. And from that self-mastery, you begin to radiate a kind of light that makes people stop and watch. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're not trying anymore. You're simply being you. The ones who once took you for granted may be surprised. They'll wonder why you no longer text, no longer come running, no longer forgive so easily. They'll be confused when you don't get angry, but also don't return. And it's that silence that forces them to face themselves. Without you to blame, without you to unload on, they begin to hear the echo of the loneliness they created. And you keep living. You keep moving forward. You rediscover the things that once made your heart flutter, an old song, an unfinished book, a slow dinner with no rush, no longer bending to others' emotions. You begin learning how to care for your own. You stop looking for someone to make you feel whole. You do that for yourself every day. Eventually, they might come back. Not because they've truly changed, but because they finally recognize what they've lost. They may try again, reach out, apologize. But by then, you're no longer the same person. You'll smile not out of forgiveness, but because you've moved on. And you'll say no gently, without bitterness, without resentment. Because now you know you don't need anyone to complete you, especially not someone who once broke you. That is freedom, a quiet kind of freedom, one that doesn't demand or shout, freedom that comes from knowing you're no longer bound by anyone's expectations. You know what you deserve and you no longer settle for anything less. You once thought you needed someone's validation to feel worthy, but now you know you are the one who defines that worth. No applause needed, no recognition required. Just living true to who you are, that's enough. There will come moments when you look back and smile, not because everything was easy, but because you didn't fall. You chose to walk through the storm quietly, and now you stand firm in the peace you created for yourself. The things you once cried over, lost sleep over, have become the very reasons you'll never return to what once hurt you. Some will say you've grown cold. Some will say you've changed. But only you understand it wasn't change out of revenge. It was change for survival and for living with greater dignity. You no longer feel the need to explain why you withdrew, why you became silent, why you're no longer as forgiving as before. Because you've come to understand a simple truth. Those who truly care won't ever make you question your place in their life. Silence means you've stopped chasing after those who only kept you halfway in their world. It means you no longer feel the need to act strong around them, because now you are strong from within. Not strong because you've endured, but because you've chosen to let go of what wasn't worthy, and you have no regrets. In that silence, you rebuild what was once broken, your trust, your self-respect, your gentleness toward yourself. You begin to clearly distinguish between those who want you for gain and those who value you for who you truly are. You learn to walk away from relationships that only exist when you're the one holding them together, and you stay in those that never make you question your worth. When you stop seeking validation from the outside, you begin to touch true peace from within. It's no longer a journey to find someone who will complete you, but a journey to fill yourself with understanding, sincerity, and gratitude for the present moment. You don't need revenge to make someone regret. Life has its own way of delivering messages. You don't need to act in place of time or consequence. One day they'll catch a glimpse of you somewhere, perhaps in a photo, an event, or a conversation with someone familiar. They'll see a brighter you, a calmer you, a life that no longer includes them. That is the moment when your silence becomes the clearest lesson. They lost someone who isn't coming back. But for you, this journey was never about making them regret. It was about no longer regretting yourself. Because yes, you once loved the wrong person, placed your trust in the wrong hands, poured your emotions in the wrong direction, but you didn't let that define you. You rose, you healed, and you moved on. In the end, the strongest thing you can do after being hurt is not to fight back, not to prove you were right, but to quietly walk away with your self-respect intact. Because there are battles you don't need to win with words. You win by protecting your peace after everything. And when you choose silence, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've outgrown the need to be understood by others. You understand yourself, and that is enough. That quiet departure is often the most powerful wake-up call for those who never valued you. They won't realize it right away. It might take a long time until your absence becomes an irreplaceable emptiness. But by then, you're no longer waiting for that recognition. Because now you don't live to impress. You live to grow, to nurture your soul, and to become worthy of something greater. You've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance. Calmness doesn't mean compromise. And letting go doesn't mean you've lost it. Means you're too tired to keep trying for something that's no longer worth the effort. That conscious withdrawal becomes the door to a new journey, one of healing, of shining, and of becoming the strongest version of yourself. So if you find yourself in that phase, that quiet phase of stepping away, pulling back, don't see it as failure. See it as a transformation, a refining process, a return to yourself. And if you see yourself in these words, if you've ever silently endured, walked through pain unnoticed, or withdrawn to protect what was left of your dignity, you are not alone. There are millions like you learning how to stand strong in powerful silence, and you're doing better than you think. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. If these words touched something in you, please subscribe to the channel for more content that heals deep, authentic, and real. Leave a comment if you're walking your own path of powerful silence. Who knows, someone on the other side of the screen might find themselves in your story. And remember, sometimes you don't need to say anything at all. Just walk forward with peace and let silence speak everything that needs to be said.